Welcome back to the Project Nomad. Today we're doing an assessment on the 3rd Gen 4Runner after we did its trial run or its dry run. And we did break a few things, so right off the bat we're going to be doing some stuff. So one of the big things that did happen to us when we were in Lytle Creek was we did go fast. We did make this thing articulate a decent amount. And one of the things that did happen was that the sway bar link on the passenger side did snap. I already took it out just because it was already covered in grease and I don't want my hands covered in it on the trail. But before I could, it did lean into the CV boot and it did cause it to tear. And this is the result of that right now. CV grease is spilled in a few places right now. I am going to be cleaning that up, hopefully, if I have enough brake cleaner. But essentially what we're going to be doing today is we're removing the CV, replacing the boot, and reinstalling the CV axle as is. We don't need to replace it, and we don't have a replacement. I just have a CV boot replacement for this thing. So that's the goal today. And then we are going to be replacing the sway bar link that we snapped when we were on trail. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Here is the new tie rod that we were going to be installing, as well as the new CV boot that we're going to be using to replace the old one. It does come with the clasp that you need, as well as a little locking ring here, plus lubricant. So it's all in one go. I will be posting up links for both of these down in the description. This is still the same one that we used from last time. It is a 2nd Gen 4Runner's rear sway bar links. And again, they're just longer, but I guess the one that we had snapped at some point. So the way that we're going to be removing the CV is we're going to have to remove the dust cover here, remove it from the bearing inside the spindle, and then knock it out freely. I am hoping that I can just remove the upper control arm from the spindle and it'll just be able to give me enough room to wiggle it out. But I've seen a lot of people just do the lower ball joint, so I might go that direction, but we'll see when it comes to it. But first things first, we're just going to pop this out, and I'm going to do that really quick. Cool. Once you remove the cotter pin and this little retaining nut, you will just be left with this 35mm nut that is basically sandwiched the entire assembly together. At this point though, it is preferable that you put on the wheel again and then through the bore of the wheel, just use an impact and break it loose. That's how a lot of people will do it. This is a 35mm socket, if I didn't mention that previously. It is relatively special. It's not found in most hardware stores, but you can still find it at most automotive stores. So you do need to go find that socket. I do recommend going online and getting a deep impact, but I do recommend going online. The prices are a little bit better and you don't have to go hunting for it from store to store. What I'm going to do now is probably put on the nuts on some of these lugs and then get a crowbar to hold this thing in place while I undo this nut. With the nut fully off, we should actually just put it back on ever so slightly so that you protect the threads. Because what we're going to do is we're going to tap the CV axle out from the front ever so slightly. And sometimes the axle itself gets jammed up and it gets really hard to remove, so you might be applying a little bit more force than I am right now to actually get the CV axle loose. But at this point, the CV axle is actually moving ever so much, ever so slightly. So it's free to actually move around. Now I decide between removing the upper ball joint or the lower ball joint. And I think I'm going to be removing the lower ball joint like everyone else does, just because I don't know if this is actually going to give me enough room to move it out. So to remove the actual ball joint or the ball joint assembly from the actual spindle, you just need to remove 4 bolts from the actual spindle, because the ball joint is actually mounted onto something separate than the actual spindle. So you're going to be using a 14mm socket to actually break everything loose and then get everything off. So that's what I'm gonna do. No, still clockwise, and just break everything loose. The one thing that sucks about working on a floor is you never have enough leverage. The lower ball joint should be now separate from the spindle. All I need to do now is tug on it ever so slightly and it should come off. And then the CV shall be pulled out ever so slightly for it. I did separate the spindle from the lower ball joint by removing the fourth and last bolt. And now you can see that the CV axle is actually pretty easy to remove now. So I'm just gonna try and get that off right now by flexing it back and forth, and then again with the mallet just trying to push it out, just like that actually. So just need to keep moving it. It's gonna be hard to do with one hand. And then after that I'm gonna go underneath and then try and separate it from the diff that's all the way inside here. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. So I got the thing out from the actual spindle. It's just gonna free float for there for a hot second. Underneath here though, it is connected to the diff right here. I am hopefully just gonna have to get pry bar and just wiggle it in there and hopefully it comes out with not that many issues. Let's just put down the camera and then hopefully it comes out relatively easy. CV axle's out. Here's complete damage on the CV boot, but it's not even a complete tear. It's just essentially a slice right here, which means that I was stopping and then the sway bar link actually just tore into it. So that's kind of upsetting. I could have stopped it right then and there, but it is what it is. I'm just gonna get this thing onto a table and then start cleaning it up. But yeah, all you need to do is get it loose here, and then over there you do need to pry it out ever so slightly. There is this little seal here that protects the actual inside seal from a lot of the heavier dirt and debris, so be mindful that you don't lose this if you have to replace this on the trail. I'm gonna clean it up. I'm gonna bring you back once this thing's on the table. So this is the axle here from what I understand. I basically just have to cut everything off of these in order to actually replace the boot. So let me just try and get that done here. So I've come to the realization that in order to remove the outer boot, I do need to remove the inner boot. So I did slowly remove the bands, and the grease is getting everywhere. So in order for me to actually get this done correctly, apparently I'm gonna have to go through the same process that you do for a complete reboot on a CV axle. I'm gonna have to mark off where the outer shell here mates up with the tripod here, and I'm gonna have to clean this up, and then I'm gonna have to use grease on both sides, and I'm gonna have to clean all of this up. So I'm gonna be using a lot of paper towels, and I'm gonna keep a trash can really close by. So that's what I'm gonna end up doing right now, and hopefully I can get this all cleaned up relatively quickly. And because this is really messy, I'm just gonna skip forward until I can actually get everything cleaned up, and then I can put everything back together. Okay, so I got the CV fully rebuilt up. Basically just took off both ends, both boots, and then slid the outer boot in from the inner boot side because it is hard to remove the actual outer boot or the outer assembly here. So that's what I did. I repacked it with grease. I did have to use hose clamps here, but they'll be good enough because the bands that they gave me were a little bit too big, so I just kind of got small hose clamps and dealt with it from here. And after that I just kind of cleaned it up. So at this point I am actually ready to put this back into the diff right here. I did clean up this area right now, and I am basically ready to go to put everything back in. Hopefully it will go smoothly, and I'll just set up the camera and start recording here. Cool. All right, so I have the CV axle inside the diff and I have it in the spindle now. Now I'm gonna try and get the spindle onto the ball joints again. So I think I'm just gonna have to use a jack to get under here and press it up, but let's see if I can do that without getting hurt. So again, I'm tying up all the bottom bolts up to 59 foot-pounds, and I'll put that on the screen. For the main spindle here, I'm going to be tightening it up to 175 foot-pounds, and I'm using that with an actual torque wrench. So that's basically all I'm doing right now, tying everything up, and then getting everything lined up to put the wheel back on. I got everything tying up to spec again, so this is all set to go. And basically I fixed up everything that I broke or damaged when I went off-roading in Lytle Creek with the 3rd gen 4Runner. It was a learning experience for me to actually remove a CV axle in the event that I actually end up taking this off-roading and actually wheeling it hard enough to actually snap a CV. I actually know how to actually get it back installed. Albeit I'd still hate to do this on the side of the track, but in the event that I do, and I'm pretty sure something always breaks, it is a relatively simple fix for me to do now. So long as I still have the correct sockets and all the correct tools, which jacks, the sockets, a pry bar, and a long enough cheater bar, everything is relatively easy to put back into place. So if you guys actually like watching me learn and grow on learning how to become a better off-roader and a better mechanic, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, be safe and tread lightly.